Everybody, hope you're all having a good Thursday. Bobby Fi flying solo today. We didn't have much golf to talk about, so those pairing events are just never that interesting to me personally, and I didn't get involved in any of the golf stuff today for what it's worth. Um, just getting into the baseball today. We'll talk basketball a little later, but I did want to go through this whole slate. Before we do, I want to encourage everybody. We've got some free trials going for literally it's got the SaberSim Ultimate package. It's got all of our stuff, all of Sheets' projections, all of Goldie's, all of my content, Roadies, Brandon Cruz, Chan, etc. So why don't you guys check it out while it's free for that trial? We're also probably going to be raising our prices in a little bit because the demand's creeping up, and it's we've been sort of going on the thinnest of margins. So we're just starting to look into that a little bit. So later this summer. So if you're interested in doing something, I suggest you guys lock yourself into something soon. With that said, let's get into the slate. I had a really good NBA night last night. Kind of, disappointed. I almost had one of those last minute decisions between the 555 and the 100 for the lineup that ended up coming in second. It cost me an extra 15K or 12.5 by not going that way. But still, nice to be on the right track with basketball. We'll get into that in a little bit later. But I'm going to go game by game here for baseball to start things off. Sheets is gone for the weekend just for what it's worth. He's still going to get his projections and stuff up. But just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. All right, let's talk about this Cleveland and Boston game. So we're in Cleveland. The weather it's 50 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from center. I don't think there's any way I'm doing anything with the bats in this game. I do think that Tristan McKenzie is definitely a guy to consider. He looked much better his last time out. Seems to be pitching still through an injury. I'm a little concerned about it. He's not the top of my list. He's a guy I'm considering today. Fairly fair price. You see the low run total. That's because of the weather partially. And I think that I've always believed in McKenzie's talent, but there's a rumor that he should have Tommy John surgery and that he's not getting it. So I'm a little concerned about him. But I am open to using him on this slate. None of the bats are going to make it in for me. If there's like a value piece or something you want to use, sure, go ahead. If you wanted to play, any of the studs, Reyes would be the one who stands out, I guess, as the value play at 2,800. Maybe Tyler Freeman, who's been good to us so far this year. But overall, not a game I want to get heavily invested to from a hitting perspective. We move over to Cincinnati. Great park, obviously, for hitting. Not ideal hitting weather. Like, you got winds blowing in from left field at only 5-6 miles an hour, but it's 55 degrees, so not ideal. But I do like the Wheeler. I think that's a piece of chalk I could go. He's got a 2K prop. His strikeouts are projected to be 2Ks higher than anybody else on the slate. That's enough of a reason. And Cincinnati's they've got some talent on offense, but I think that this is a good spot to use Wheeler. I think he's the best option of the spend ups, and is definitely going to be a guy I use quite a bit today. I didn't get to any Nick Martinez, and I actually like the Phillies as a slightly lower owned stack. You can see they're not totally unowned, but Goldie's got them nobody above 10%. I think that's an interesting stack to use today. So I'm in on the Philly side of it. Again, not ideal hitting conditions. Would prefer the lefties to the righties, but I do think that they're interesting, and they're expensive, so they're going to be low owned. But I personally really do like the Phillies as a contrarian stack. They're not my favorite, but they are one that I'm definitely considering. All right, let's move over to Minnesota. All right, so here's where I'm struggling. So the Simeon Woods Richardson. We got his first start, and he was really good. He pitched 6 innings. He had 5 Ks in 6 innings against Detroit. 80 pitches. It is Detroit, but this is the White Sox, and he's 4K. I am going to eat a little bit of that chalk. I think it makes enough sense for me, and I'm definitely going to take some gambles there. It's also, for what it's worth, it's 62 degrees in Minnesota, but you've got winds blowing in 15 miles an hour from right field, so kind of negates a little bit of the power of the lefties. And I think that's a spot we could definitely look to attack with the lefties if we wanted to on the Twin side. But I think overall the pitching is more what I'm focused on. I don't think I'm getting to Soroka, although I think you could make an argument. He's been horrible, but it is, it's decent enough pitching weather. It's Minnesota. We've seen struggle at times from the plate, especially against righties. So I definitely like Richardson, but I think Soroka is a little bit further down the line for me personally. As far as the hitting goes, you can see a pretty popular Twins stack here. And again, I'm sorry, not the lefty stack. I get behind the righties in this game. The problem I'm having is 15-mile-an-hour winds blowing at you. It's never fun to try and get someone to launch one, but they are super cheap. They do make things work. They're lower down the list for me, but they are on my list. So no issue if you want to use them as fillers or as full plays. Guys like Willie Castro hit a home run last night. He should be moving up in the order. We think he'd be batting 6th today. Oh no, he's batting 6th today. So I'm okay with like the Minnesota stack, but the highest priority for me here is I'm definitely going to play the Woods Richardson some, and I'm definitely going to get to some of the Minnesota bats. I did want to explore the idea of the White Sox just because they're so low owned. Maybe it's not something you do as a stack. Maybe you can make a 3-man for value with like Sheets, Lopez, and Eloy, and then play the Dodgers because they're so cheap. So I don't mind the idea of doing that as well. This whole game, not great hitting conditions, but there is enough value to make it viable in tournaments. Moving over to Toronto and KC, I'm just going to grab the weather while I do this. This is the one with I'm not even 100% sure when or how this game plays. It's a tricky one. I don't love the hitting in it for what it's worth anyway. You've got 17-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from right field. It's 57 degrees and it's supposed to be rainy. I'm just going to grab it, see if I can get an updated version of a weather forecast here while we do this. Yeah, it's not out of the way. There is some definite dangers here. So I'm a little bit, I'm off this game. I kind of was off of it anyway, so I'm okay with it. But if you felt like you needed to do something, probably just keep an eye on the weather, see if you hear anything from the teams, because I really don't know what to do with it right now. I just personally am not that excited about it anyway. Well, we have another pitcher's weather slate here, pitcher's weather game in Chicago. It's 50 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from right center field. You have neither team. The Astros with a 3.9 total in real life. Cubs with a 3.5. I don't love picking on the Cubs, but I do think Verlander has to be considered in play through, I believe, 86 pitches his first start. Or maybe it was just 80, but I'm definitely okay with getting Verlander on the ramp up here. And I don't even mind Assad, but I just don't think you need to go there. But I have Verlander as a guy I'm certainly considering. And then I just couldn't get to the bats myself personally. If I did, it would be the Houston side because I don't really want to pick on Verlander. But I don't love taking hitters the best hitters on these teams, Kyle Tucker, Jordan Alvarez. It's not that they can't hit it out with 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in Chicago. And again, 10-mile-an-hour in Chicago means like 15 most places. So it's just a little bit harder. Certainly never going to argue with those guys, but I didn't get to the stacking of either of these teams at all today. This is a spot where, call it because of weather, like you've got a low-owned Castillo here. You've got Andrew Heaney, who I think this is the perfect 4 prongs kind of a game. I'm not loving Castillo. I do have a little bit of interest in Heaney. We've seen, look, they've been better against lefties historically, these Seattle teams. But I also, so I like the Heaney as a wild card play. Maybe you play him with the Woods Richardson or something like that, and then you can get all the bats you want. The problem is some of the bats I want are in this game against Heaney. So I actually think like if you're playing a cash game, I think I would like to get these two guys into a cash game type of build. I like the Seattle stack on the other side. So I'm both interested in Heaney and interested in Seattle here. I know it's weird when those things happen, but we know the high variance of a pitcher like Heaney walks guys, gives up home runs. And this is a spot where, you've got no weather concerns. It's in Texas. So one of the better spots on the slates today. I also think Texas as a super low owned stack is very interesting today. I have Seattle as the preferred one, but Texas is so expensive. How do you get them in, all that stuff? But if you look at the Texas side of things, like they're going to be really low owned. Castillo's a good pitcher, don't get me wrong, but Texas we've seen light up pretty much anybody. Maybe you don't make a full stack because it's hard to get to price wise, but I certainly wouldn't mind it, at least a mini stack, and I don't even mind a full stack here of Texas. This is just a very talented offense that I like to be overweight on in general, and we're looking for different things to do than these last 2 games, which are going to be the chalk hitting games on the slate. Now, here's the interesting thing about these ones too. I think Randy Vasquez is totally in play. I don't think that I'm going to end up doing much of it. But I look, young guy, some talent, struggled in AAA. Didn't do anything special his first time out. Only struck out 3, but that was Toronto. We've seen Colorado struggle against just basically everyone. Another way, there's the Heaney, Vasquez, Woods Richardson that are all like interesting spend downs that you can consider on this slate. On the flip side, you're going to have a very popular San Diego and a very unowned Colorado side. So I think you just go to Colorado in that kind of situation where they're going to be low owned. It's good hitting weather in Colorado. It's 77 degrees, crosswinds. It's definitely a game where you'd want to get overexposure. But the problem is you're going to have such a shock. And by the way, look at San Diego's ownership. I think it's going to be a little bit higher. I think people maybe are getting fed up, but I don't think they're fully fed up yet. And I think Nolan. I think that the Rockies at lower ownership is a really, really interesting way to go today. It seems really obvious, and I think that's probably what I'm going to end up doing some of. Colorado, Seattle, and then we'll get to it. So this is an interesting one. It's not great hitting weather in Washington. It's not terrible. It's only 6 miles an hour wind coming in from right center, 60 degrees out. Not too bad. But I personally, so I like Yamamoto a little bit. It's interesting that Gore is getting some ownership. And that just shows you how weird this slate is. And I'm just going to show you what, just go on SaberSim projections in a minute. But I like Yamamoto quite a bit, like as a contrarian, or you can play him with Wheeler if you want to play like Minnesota or something. The problem is I think you're then narrowing yourself into a very similarly replicated type of build. So it's going to be hard to get very unique there. I'm not talking about worrying about dupes. I'm talking about worrying about having to get it exactly perfect. You'd like to have some wiggle room on your stacks in general. I think this total for Yamamoto is this projection is a little absurd, to be honest with you. But you look at the projections today for all the pitchers. I'm going to go back to the Dodgers in a minute, but look at all the pitchers' projections today. And you can see you've got Wheeler clearly ahead of everybody else. You've got Verlander, McKenzie, Reagans, and then Woods Richardson is 4K, and he's 1 point less than these guys, basically. Then you've got, Heaney, who's 3 points less than those guys, but certainly we know has the upside. People may not love, where am I looking for? I'm looking for the Rockies. I'm sorry, the San Diego guy. Vasquez, 4 points less, 5,600. I think you could do some weird things with spending down at pitching, or I would go all the way up to Wheeler Verlander or Wheeler Yamamoto would probably be my preferred way of dealing with the pitching there. But you can see the projections, and I'll use Goldie's projections because they're a little bit more accurate. But got Wheeler, that looks more right. Yamamoto 17. And then, these other guys are a little bit lower down, but still you're talking about a few fantasy points for like 6K difference. I think you got to take some shots on some of these cheap guys today. That's just the way I look at it. And as far as the Dodgers go, while I do love them and I'm always going to want to be overweight, man, I'm curious where their ownership ends up, because a few minutes ago we had them as like clearly the chalkiest team, and now it's sort of evened out. I think the Dodgers are a really good stack today. We'll be playing them. Again, not ideal hitting conditions. You'd rather the righties than the lefties, but that's easier to do because you got Mackenzie Gore on the mound. I like Mackenzie Gore as a pitcher. I believe the Dodgers to have the best offense in baseball and best for fantasy for that purpose, along with Atlanta, best for fantasy going forward. Pretty close with them in Texas. All of them are really, really good. But I would be happy to take some shots in the Dodgers. I was curious where the ownership was going to end up. I think maybe Goldie's has got it a little bit more accurate. And if that's accurate, I think we want to get into the Dodger business. That's another thing we could do with the spend down pitchers. So to sort of sum things up before I get to any questions or thoughts, I have the Dodgers, Seattle, Philadelphia, both sides of San Diego, Colorado as my favorite ways to go today. My pitchers, Wheeler Yamamoto at the top, along with Verlander. On the cheap end, Heaney, Vasquez, and Woods Richardson being my favorite. So that's sort of what I'm doing today. Hey, look, we got Rody in the house. Love to see it. Good to see you, Don. Good to see you, K9. Hey, look, double cheap pitcher. There you go, Rody. You could do double cheap pitcher and go like Dodgers, Rockies or something, or even San Diego Dodgers. You probably can get away with it. I think it's that kind of a slate. Anybody have any questions or thoughts you want to go through? Because I don't really have a whole lot else to tag before I get in there. I've got to finish my builds. These early morning ones, I'm not going to get my core plays necessarily up, but I'll show you guys exactly what I'm doing in the Discord for everybody who is interested. For what it's worth, Corey Seager was questionable and not projected to play. He's in the lineup today, just for what it's worth. That just got that news. I think it actually came in before I came on air, but I didn't get a chance to see it till just now. So I again love the Dodgers, Seattle, both sides, Philadelphia, and then mixing in pieces, not fully stacking San Diego, maybe fully stacking Colorado. That's sort of where I'm at right now. So hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. This might just be a quick video. We'll have a little basketball stuff for you later, but I got to finish my MLB builds today, and then we'll get into to some NBA stuff in a little bit. So good luck to everybody. I hope you guys crush it. I'll be in the Discord if anybody has any thoughts, questions, or ideas, or anything. Good luck to everybody.